The following presentation from WBOC News contains images of drug paraphernalia that some may find unsuitable for viewing. Viewer discretion is advised.
You ever OD?
Yeah, I did, matter of fact. Oh, I just died. Like, I was just dead.
It's an epidemic sweeping over Delmarva, lurking in every city and town. It's destroying families.
She was there, but it felt like she wasn't there.
Parents see their children suffer.
It's not anything I wish on anybody, because you're in a perpetual state of crisis as a family.
Police and lawmakers are baffled. Solutions are making the problems worse.
People are passed out Narcan as if it was a lollipop.
It's a venom, evil and seductive.
Oh, it relaxes you. It just takes it all away.
And it hits home.
It is an epidemic. And if it's affecting me in small town, what is it doing across the nation of this country?
This is Hooked, Delmarva's drug crisis. Delmarva is hooked. The opioid crisis here is out of control. It's literally killing us.
It's killing our families, our friends, our communities. I'm Jacqueline Carlin.
And I'm Steve Hammond. We'll be here on the Newsplex for the next hour to show you just how bad the problem is. You'll meet people who are suffering, people trying to get off these deadly drugs and rebuild their lives. You'll also meet people trying to restore hope.
And I will be with professionals you can call now in our Newsplex. Call that number at the bottom of your screen for help, and you'll meet the people answering the phones in just a few moments.
We begin with two stories of addiction and heartbreak. Battling addiction can end with the worst possible outcome, death. First, WBOC's Kimberly Wiggins.
Even as a little tiny person, he had this great little giggle. And in my head, my memory of him would be probably giggling as he got his clothes changed.
Where's Matt?
John McKenzie Wessels was a baby full of joy.
I'm gonna eat you. I'm gonna eat.
Debbie and Michael adopted their Mac shortly after birth.
To have a happy, healthy life, to have all kinds of wonderful experiences. I think what comes to mind is feeling sad that those things didn't happen, that the opportunity is lost.
Mac cherished his family and friends.
This was a hub of that activity, and very fond and wonderful memories of all those years.
But as Mac entered adolescence, the picture changed. Mac started abusing Adderall as a teenager. He never preferred one particular drug. It was all about convenience. Counseling helped so much he was able to enroll in a Florida college in 2012.
And I think that that anxiety and depression, the underlying mental health issues, loom large.
His parents discovered Mac had flunked all of his classes. The Wessels flew him to a rehab center in California. He eventually moved to a sober living facility, but relapsed, going in and out of rehab at least 15 times.
It's traumatic. Every time the phone rang, I would equate it to PTSD.
Finally, the light seemed to return to Mac's eyes. While living in California, he became sober long enough to attend college again. Then, 2 weeks later,
I was at school. I was having a great day.
Wessels asked Mac to send her a selfie of himself in class. Hours later, as she and her husband slept,
I always thought it was going to be a phone call.
Deputies arrived on the Wessels' doorstep explaining their 23-year-old son had died from a heroin overdose.
This is a song that was written by a close family friend. Actually, he's from Laurel, Delaware.
Close your eyes, young soldier.
And he had a close relationship with Mac for Mac's entire life.
peace at heaven's gate.
When he got the news of Mac's death, he sat down and said he had to start to write because it was the only way that he could cope with the news.
Cast away on your favorite ocean.
What is so conflicting is that there is also a sense of truly, he's going to be at peace.
Debbie surprised many, telling the truth about the battle her baby faced.
And this is what we wrote for Mac's obituary. John Mac Wessels, 23, a bright, gentle son, most recently at Pasadena, California, passed away on January 13, 2017, of a drug overdose.
The family is determined Mac's legacy will help others.
There is no addict that wants the life of an addict. And Mac really wanted to be happy.
That fight to save others is what keeps the Wessels going. Debbie, a lifelong educator, shares her story and encourages families at events such as this overdose awareness one back in August.
If it comes down to making the change for one person, I'll be thankful for that one change.
Changes Mac's parents call Mac moments.
And what we did was we printed postcards, stamped self-addressed postcards, with the idea that we'd like someone to do something special, an act of kindness to make someone's life a little better.
Mac enjoyed spending time with his friends inside his Salisbury home, but his parents say he was most at home out here, spending time on the water, especially on the family boat.
Mac always dreamed of returning to the water.
He had asked if he could stay sober for a year if we would take him sailing again.
In July, they did, for what would have been his 24th birthday, 6 months after Mac's death.
I'm going to hold him in my heart, not in the years that were so difficult for all of us, but in the years that this house was full of laughter.
I'm going to eat you. Oh, you're just so sweet.
And now your soul is free.
Debbie and Mike learned a valuable lesson, very much the hard way, that with something like this comes some measure of shame. But Steve, they also learned if you are open, people will reach out to you and you can move past the shame.
A very difficult thing to do, Kim. And with our next story, we meet a father learning the same difficult lesson. Ren Whaley of Delmarva, Delaware, lost his son to addiction. We found out about Ren's story because of a YouTube video, a video that is chilling and deeply moved us. Here's that father's grief in his own words.
There's so many people being lost. There's spouses, there's parents, kids. It's not natural for a parent to have to bury their child. My son, he is Lorenzo the Fourth. I've always said that I will always refer to him as in the present. Lorenzo, my son, the fourth, he was born quite the character, you know, from the time he could walk and talk. He never met a stranger, outgoing personality. Everybody that had any contact with him loved him. Real bubbly personality, just a practical joker, but nobody could really stay mad at him. He wanted to play guitar, so me and his mother, we purchased him one year for Christmas. I believe he was right around the age of 13. He formed a band with some friends, and they played, his choice of music wasn't my choice of music. They liked the heavy metal, da 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 da, and I would say, son, please, you know. Later on in life, you know, he would experiment different things, and he got taking some of the opiates that are out there just everywhere now. His sister, my daughter Emily, actually came to me one day and said, Dad, I need to talk to you. And I said, and she started crying. And I said, why? What's going on? And she said, It's hard. She had brought this kid out that he had. It was this kit that he always carried everywhere with him. But there was needles, there was heroin. So of course, you know, I confronted him about it, and he said, "Dad, I'm trying to give this up, and I can't." He said, "It's got such a hold on me." After that first detox, then there was the first rehab. We were in Florida at that time, and Darryl Strawberry, the old baseball player, maybe, I don't know if I can mention his name, but him and his wife, they've opened a couple, 4 or 5 rehab places actually. So Lorenzo went there for a 30-day stay, counseling, you know, he stayed right there. He got out of that, you know, "Oh, I'm good." 3 days later, he's using again. The 4th time, he got hooked up with a place down in West Palm Beach, Florida. And he came out of this, he was really good. And then he went into a 1-year sober living home and was going to be there for a year. He had plans for the future. He wanted to become a counselor to help people with this addiction. He wanted to get involved some way. His guitar playing, he went back to where he had a YouTube channel way back, you know, when he was young with the boys and all this. But he had done a video while he was in the sober living home about My Brown Spider, I believe it was called, about him dealing with the addiction and how it's always right there.
I let him crawl all on my skin. I promise he'll never bite me. He wraps me in his web tightly.
I watched it and I was just like, "Wow, Lorenzo, that's great." And he said, "I've got a whole lot of these songs written, and I'm going to try to do one, you know, every week or so. And hopefully people watching this can see it and it can be a help to them." Unfortunately, that was the only one that he got to do. In March, he got in the sober living house toward the end of December. Middle of March, I got the call that every parent dreads to think about getting called. I was out with friends, and it's hard, I'm sorry. His mom called and said that Lorenzo had gone out on the street. He bought some heroin to do one more dose, and it was fentanyl, wasn't heroin. He didn't know that. It was pure fentanyl. He got it in the bathroom at the sober living house and did it. Boom. He didn't stand a chance.
So wake me up again, Narcan in my veins. Don't forget to take the reins.
When I see the thing on YouTube where he's sitting there with the guitar, that's bad enough. And I've not been able to watch the video. There's been several things that I've not been able to do. There's not one person here that does not have something that they are addicted with or they struggle with, be it coffee, food, cigarettes, alcohol, sex, internet, you know, pornography, gambling, anything. And most people slip. They eat that piece of cake when they're on the diet. They have that, "Oh, I'm gonna have one more cigarette." My son's one more thing killed him. And like I say, if you're using it, get help. There's nothing to be ashamed of.
Somehow I I've survived this long. Maybe there's some hope inside me. Desperate, please set my mind free.
Ren says he is determined to open a sober living home on Delmarva. He wants to open it this coming March, on the anniversary of his son's death. Later on Hooked, Delmarva's drug crisis.
Oh, I just died. I was just dead.
We sit with this man whose relationship with heroin dates back over 2 decades, how he is still fighting his addiction. And after the break, a warning sign. The number of overdoses here are rising. We look at how bad this Delmarva crisis is, county by county. Each of the 3 states on Delmarva has its own leading killer. The #1 cause of overdose deaths in Maryland is heroin. In Delaware, it's prescription pills. And in Virginia, it's fentanyl. But first, Jackie is in our call center, where representatives from across Delmarva are in the Newsplex answering calls for help and support. Jackie?
Well, Steve, we have volunteers from all around the peninsula here with us tonight, ready and willing to take your calls in this call center. We have people from organizations on the eastern shore of Maryland, Delaware, and Accomack County in Virginia. These people all specialize in addiction recovery, rehabilitation, and support. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction and are looking for help, please call right now, 443-880-9195. Now, joining me now is Heidi McNeely of the Worcester County Warriors Against Opiate Addiction. Heidi, thank you for joining us. Now, we just saw some heartbreaking stories about parents not knowing the warning signs, maybe not wanting to recognize the warning signs. You work with parents a lot. What warning signs do you recommend?
There are a lot of things that parents can look for. I think the obvious things, like if you happen to see syringes in your home that don't belong there, things like little baggies, little cellophane baggies. But then there are things that people might not even consider, like missing spoons. That's a great warning sign, really important warning sign. Missing prescription bottles. If you think you've misplaced your prescription, perhaps it's been taken. Or maybe the pills in your prescription bottle are lower than they were, which is another reason why it's so important to keep prescriptions locked up and secure.
Okay, so and probably a lot of parents want to think that they're not really seeing a problem.
Right,
but
absolutely.
But there are signs to be found.
Absolutely.
Right. Heidi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jackie.
Now, Heidi and all of our experts are here ready to answer any questions you may have on how to battle your addiction or help the ones you love. This is Hooked, Delmarva's drug crisis.
It's bad. You literally see signs on the side of the road in communities on Delmarva, signs that remind you of how many people are overdosing in this deadly epidemic every time you pass by. These are warning signs for all of us.
Deputies are on the scene of another overdose right now out in Hebron, Maryland. And you can rest assured they're only alive because of Narcan. It's one of the saddest parts of our job to do what we're doing right now. But unfortunately, it changes sometimes several times a day.
This sign at the Wicomico County Sheriff's Office would change again before the day ended. Heroin and opioids have spread like a disease throughout the county. Nowhere is immune. From Whitehaven to Salisbury to Pittsville, and law enforcement is dealing with the impacts of these drugs constantly.
87% of all crime that we handle here in Wicomico County, 87% is directly linked to drug addiction. 87%. Every single day, Without exception, when deputies leave this office, go out on patrol every day, they're making heroin arrests. Every day. That is a fact. Every day. Not every other day, not once or twice a week, every day.
And Sheriff Lewis says that the dealers are getting better and better at hiding the drugs from police and getting them into the hands of addicts.
This was recovered from a residence right here in Wycomico County, a residence that's about 6 or 7 minutes from here. This is a magnet on a piece of steel. In order to operate this compartment, this was a piece of furniture in a house with a fish aquarium stand on it. I've got my refrigerator on it. This had a fish aquarium stand on it with fish in it, water in it, pumps, UV lights, etc. You don't touch the furniture, you just hold it off to the side. Down inside, this is where they hide their bags of dope. This is where they hide their bricks of cocaine. This is where they hide their kilograms of heroin. We get these all the time, but you also get WD-40 cans. We get cans of hairspray. We get oil cans. We get all kinds of cans with screw bottoms on them and screw tops. You can easily put 30 to 50 packets of heroin inside this can.
But those dealers are not just in Wycomico County. They are spread across the peninsula. The city of Crisfield may be small, but the drug problem there is big, like anywhere else on Delmarva.
Our last raids that we had and our last drug investigation we have took over a year long. Well, we ended up with 40 arrests in a small town of 2,700 people. That's a lot of drug addiction.
40 faces up on the wall and boxes of evidence, everything from spoons to syringes to heroin itself. The chief says since all those arrests, things have been a little better in Crisfield, but he knows it won't last. The problem will swell again in the small city, and it will continue to evolve, with police discovering new wrinkles all the time, including Narcan parties, with multiple people using heroin at the same time.
What they were doing, in essence, basically bringing somebody there with Narcan, knowing they got to that edge. If they went over the edge, somebody would be there for them. Automatically bring them back.
And police these days must be extra vigilant because drug deals and drug use can be happening just about anywhere at any time.
Walmart parking lot, Target parking lot, the mall parking lot.
A lot of the sales are being phone called in, and a person's meeting a person inside the door so that if they're not on the street, to not making the police aware of what's going on.
Police across the peninsula are fighting this epidemic every day, and despite their best efforts, the numbers on signs like this one in Wycomico County continue to go up every day. When it comes to this opioid crisis, Wycomico County is hit the hardest on Delmarva, but this problem stretches across our peninsula. First, let's look at Delaware in Sussex County. With the most recent numbers available in 2016, Sussex County had 76 overdose deaths from heroin, opioid pills, and fentanyl. In Kent County, there were 50 overdose deaths last year. On Maryland's eastern shore, Wycomico County has it the worst, with 18 overdose deaths in the first 3 months of 2017. In Talbot County, there were 9 opioid overdose deaths. Worcester County, 8. 5 in Dorchester, 5 in Queen Anne's County. Caroline County, 3. No opioid overdose deaths were reported in Kent and Somerset counties in the first 3 months of 2017. In 2016, heroin was the cause of 4 deaths in Accomack County, Virginia, and fentanyl was the cause of 4 other deaths. Virginia Health Department officials say the fentanyl problem is getting worse across the state. People are often exposed to drugs like heroin at an early age by their friends. 80% of opioid addicts start with prescription drugs before trying heroin. The 3 most common opioid prescribed drugs leading in overdose deaths in the U.S. are methadone, oxycodone, and hydrocodone, commonly in the form of Vicodin. And who's making the drugs? In 2015, the leading opioid products were produced by 5 companies: Johnson & Johnson, Insys Therapeutics, Mylan, Depomed, and Purdue Pharma. But let's walk you back further. Heroin was created in 1898, and when it was created, it was considered a wonder drug. So how do we get from that point to now? Here's WBOC's Chris Weimer.
Bags like these are filling evidence lockers across Delmarva. Inside them, heroin laced with fentanyl, an opiate 50 to 100 times more powerful than heroin alone. This one is just heroin. and there's no way you or I or even the police can tell which is which. It's so dangerous, police won't even take it out of the bag or conduct field tests on these drugs. These opiates have a long history, a history that began in the home medicine cabinet. According to the CDC, from the late 1990s to 2015, more than 183,000 people have died from opioid prescription overdoses in the U.S. But the history of opioids goes much farther back than 1998. In 1898, the Bayer Company started production of another opioid, heroin. It was touted as a wonder drug and used for issues as simple as a cough suppressant. Realizing the dangers of heroin and its addictive tendencies, heroin was outlawed in 1924. And over the course of the next 5 decades, doctors began to understand the dangers of opioids. But in the 70s and 80s, a number of studies were published that would change the course of history. The studies argued opioids were rarely addictive and even more rarely caused death. In 1996, OxyContin was introduced.
There's no question that our best, strongest pain medicines are the opioids, but these are the same drugs that have a reputation for causing addiction and other terrible things. Now, in fact, the rate of addiction amongst pain patients who are treated by doctors is much less than 1%.
This is a promotional video by Purdue Pharma from 1998. Dr. Alan Spanos, a man trusted to care for the lives of others, pushing OxyContin, one of the most deadly and abused drugs the U.S. has ever seen.
They don't wear out, they go on working, they do not have serious medical side effects. And so these drugs, which I repeat are our best, strongest pain medications, should be used much more than they are for patients in pain.
The video, a startling glimpse into the recent past. In hindsight, an eerie foreshadowing to where we are today.
Our best, strongest pain medicines are the opioids.
Dr. Wadid Zaki is a pain specialist at Atlantic General Hospital in Berlin.
I did my interventional pain fellowship over at the University of Pittsburgh.
He gave us some insight into what pain management was like during the time OxyContin was first introduced.
Even the hospitals actually encouraged at that time treating pain as it was the 5th vital sign. And from that standpoint, and being the only tool, that was used excessively.
Excessive use of prescription painkillers often leads to a cheaper and more readily available alternative. Enter back into the picture heroin. And enter Alicia Johnson of Seaford. Today she enjoys playing with her son. But for a time, things were darker. Struggling with back pain, Alicia turned to pain meds. The pain meds lasted for a couple years.
It was brought to my attention that heroin was a lot cheaper, and it was very easy to get.
Salisbury police tell us they are seeing it more than any other drug. Even more recently, heroin has been laced with fentanyl, a drug originally designed in the 1960s for treating severe pain, often terminally ill patients. Dr. James Cockey with the Wicomico Health Department says the fentanyl showing up in heroin is not pharmaceutical grade. Cockey says it's a cheap way for drug makers to strengthen the potency and thus save on the cost of heroin. And like we pointed out earlier, buy a batch of heroin and you won't know if fentanyl is there.
For most heroin users and addicts on the street, there's no way of distinguishing.
And with fentanyl being manufactured illegally, there's no guarantee how it's made or how much is mixed into heroin. And yet, Dr. Cockey says an addict will still take that chance. The woman you just saw in that piece, Alicia Johnson, says she's been off opioids for over a year. Last week, the Drug Enforcement Administration announced indictments against 2 Chinese manufacturers of illegal fentanyl. The indictments follow an unraveling spur of events involving the DEA, following the Washington Post and 60 Minutes report on the national opioid crisis.
Later on Hooked, Delmarva's drug crisis.
Who will heal these people like me? You see, they hurt deep within their spirit, and Jesus is the truth, and it's our appointed time to hear it.
One man's unique encounter and journey to recovery through the gift of spoken word. But after the break,
staying in that truck because I can't seem to get it in my head that the result's going to be the same every time.
Out of his car and homeless, how this addict is living with his addiction and the shocking moments that led him to this park. Rural areas in Virginia, like Accomack County, have the highest death rates for prescription opioids, while urban areas see higher death rates for illicit opioids. Last year, opioid drug overdoses surpassed both car accident and gun-related deaths in Virginia. Jackie?
Well, Steve, the phones are starting to light up here in the call center. Programs throughout the peninsula are all working with police departments and health officials in each state to get those overdose death rates down. Now, joining us now is Virginia State Police Special Agent Scott Wade of the Eastern Shore Drug Task Force. Agent Wade, thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
How do you, in the Virginia Police Department, how do you work with organizations, support organizations, to make sure people get the help they need?
Well, we've joined forces with the Community Services Board and Social Services. We've created a flyer that has all the services available to these individuals, and so we can pass it out anytime law enforcement runs into someone that is suffering with an addiction or a family member, so we can make contact with them.
Now, we were talking a little bit during the show that you've been in law enforcement, drug enforcement, for 23 years.
Yes, ma'am.
How bad has it become, and how quickly has it happened?
Our greatest increase started about 2 years ago, is when we started seeing a lot of heroin and fentanyl in Accomack and Northampton counties.
And how bad has it been?
And last year we had 12 deaths in Accomack County.
How about the year before?
I think there was a total of 30 deaths in the 5 years prior to that, but we had a pretty good increase last year.
Do you feel like you're getting a handle on it? Do you feel like you're getting the upper hand on it, or do you feel like you're still outpacing your efforts?
We're doing all that we can. We're making great efforts, and I think working closer with the community services is making an improvement.
All right, very good. Thank you, Agent Wade, for joining us
Thank
tonight.
you.
Now, if you or someone you know is looking for help finding resources in your particular area, call this number right now, 443-880-9195. We will connect you with places in your community to help you get on the right track to start your road to recovery. Your fight should not be a lonely one. Our call center team is here to help.
The following presentation from WBOC News contains images of drug paraphernalia that some may find unsuitable for viewing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Now it's time to introduce you to Charlie Honaker. Charlie has battled drug addiction for a long time. WBOC's Bill Mitch caught up with Charlie on a park bench.
Recently, we met with Charlie Honaker. He's 40 years old and lives in Seaford. We met Charlie at Sir Optimus Park, and he was going through a rough time.
I guess where are you living right now? Right now I'm living in that truck.
Not only was he living in the truck, Charlie told us he had been awake for 3 straight days, driving through the streets of Seaford, looking for his next fix.
You said you've been up for 3 days.
Yeah.
When was the last time you used it?
A couple hours ago.
And what was that?
Heroin and crack. It's a struggle. It's taken me to lows that I never thought that I'd ever experience. Hurt the people that love you the most because they're the closest to you, and you don't mean to. It's the addiction, but some people don't understand that, and it doesn't even make sense to keep going back to it. But it's just something that you're powerless over, man.
Charlie has been on and off drugs for 23 years, completed programs, and relapsed. He thought things were going well recently.
4 weeks ago, I was in Disney for a week. Rented a car, rented a house. I have 50 more pounds on me. And now I don't have any of that. You know, I'm staying in that truck because I can't seem to get it in my head that the result's gonna be the same every time. So it's just a struggle again, you know?
When you use heroin specifically,
Heroin specifically?
how do you feel?
I don't shoot it. I used to shoot it before, but I don't shoot it now. I've just been sniffing it, but either or. There's a rush you get from shooting it, and it's different. But like I'll do a whole bag, I'll sniff a bag, pull that drip down, and you can feel like you just get into it's like a chill mode. It's like boom, it hits you. You kind of feel like a warm rush, and it's just you just start grooving. I mean, that's the best way I can explain it. It's like everything's just good.
You ever OD?
Yeah, I did. Matter of fact, I think 4 times, but 2 that I definitely know of. One specific time I remember, I did a shot, and next thing I know, I'm in the back of an ambulance. Like, I'm coming to, I see the county boy and the 2 paramedics, and he's like, I just do an Narcan shot. I didn't give you the whole thing, I gave you like a half a shot so you don't go into withdrawal, but, and then it's like the realization, I'm like, oh, I just died. Like, I was just dead. And I went to the hospital. I vividly remember that, the whole, but I did it again, same deal. Like, you think,
How badly do you want to be done this?
I couldn't wait for today because I knew, like in my mind, I'm gonna keep using it until 1 or 2 things happen. Either I have a opportunity to like really stop, or I get locked up. That's how it typically goes for me. Because standing in the truck, for me, I'm just like, I'm in the mix, I'm just riding around aimlessly. It's hot, I'm sweating, I'm like, nowhere to go. I'm in the mix.
And after we finished talking to Charlie, we walked back to his truck where he was sleeping at night, and he drove off to the Harrington house to start his new road to recovery, hopefully for the last time. Charlie is still battling that addiction. Overcoming addiction is never easy alone, and for Charlie, overcoming his addiction happens one day at a time.
Coming later, we sit with a Delaware man, a former addict, who is truly inspiring. It's not just what he says, it's how he says it. And getting back on track, the steps to a new life and a newfound purpose for this Delmarva man after hitting rock bottom. According to investigators and task force agencies, heroin is making its way to the Eastern Shore by way of Baltimore, Philadelphia, and New York. And police say heroin is often trafficked into these cities from Mexico. Jackie?
Well, there are resources in each state working to get those trying to overcome their addictions, like Charlie, the help they need. If you or someone you know is living with a drug addiction and looking for help, call 443-880-9195. There is support for you here in the Newsplex and all throughout our community. Give us a call.
Across the peninsula, men ages 40 and above are dying from heroin and prescription pill overdoses, while men between the ages of 25 and 40 are dying from fentanyl overdoses. The road to recovery is often full of ups and downs, but what happens when dealing with drug addiction becomes too hard and you just want to end it all? Here's WBOC's Madeline Overturf with the story of a man who, after hitting rock bottom, is finally back on track.
On a dreary day in Seaford, Gary Calloway walks to work.
I was somebody. I still am somebody. But there for a while, my life was so gone that I wanted to give up. I'm here for a purpose. I'm here for a reason. God's got me here. By the grace of God, I'm still standing here. I look at recovery as one day at a time. If you can get through that day and your eyes open the next day, that's a good day. That's a good start.
A few steps off his path are some railroad tracks. Tracks that lead Gary's mind on a trip back to his past.
I've walked these tracks about 2 years. When I was homeless and I was back in the woods, I lived just on the outside of town.
Gary says he lived alone in the woods, but he had a partner in those 2 years, heroin.
I would go in my veins here, all in my hands here. Wherever I could find a vein, I'd pinch it off and see them pop up, and I would stick my hands all in here. I would even get water from the ditches to put in, to melt my dope down in, you know what I mean? If I didn't have any water, I'd find a mud puddle. I'd get the water out of the mud puddle just to mix it and put in my vein.
So you could have more
space?
Yeah,
so I could be, I'd feel normal then. I wasn't high, I was just feeling normal.
It's like a routine.
Yeah, I had to have it. I had to have it, or I was just going crazy.
Back on track, Gary's walk to work is leading him to the ACE Center. Gary is a handyman here at the center, doing everything from cleaning to sorting through donations. He works here now, but it wasn't long ago that Gary turned to this center in his most desperate time of need.
That is one powerful drug. That's the devil himself He's taking over this country so bad. It's like, and if I hadn't found this ACE Center, I probably would be dead. There's no doubt in my mind. When you're lost and you're homeless and you have nowhere to go or nowhere to turn to, and you come here, it's like somebody taking their arms and putting around you and telling you it's going to be okay.
Before he got to the ACE Center, Gary wanted to be dead, to rid himself of his addiction for good. And Gary turned to the same types of cleaning chemicals he now uses nearly every day.
I took some back to my tent with me, and I put some in my syringe and I injected into my vein, and nothing happened. Nothing. I felt nothing from it. And then I took some ammonia I have here, and I tried it. And nothing except it burned my arm clean up here. It kept burning like I stuck my hand in fire. And then it stopped right here. That's where it stopped. And I'm still here. I'm standing here today telling my story. And I hope one person out there can hear this. Because if you can hear this and take it to the heart, man, you've got a life to live. There's goodness out here, man. If you can just open your eyes just a little bit, oh man, that's all it would take.
Gary has been clean for a year now and knows that he is a survivor.
It makes me feel like I'm a champion. I am somebody. I'm a person too.
Work is over. Another day clean for Gary, another short walk home. It's all another step in his lifelong road to recovery.
Gary plans to continue working at the ACE Center, helping others to find their purpose so they can get back on track.
Up next, a man tells his compelling story of recovery in a way you wouldn't expect, and the organization that helped him to end his addiction. Jackie?
Now here on Delmarva, Teen Challenge supports people in our very own backyard with recovery. And joining us now is David Baugh, a former student of Teen Challenge and now director of Square One Sober Living Homes. And David, I'm going to have you join me now and just tell us a little bit about the Sober Living Homes and also about triggers that families can look for in their kids at home.
Well, there's numerous signs that you can look for, but if you see a family member acting, not themselves, getting agitated easily, getting angry, getting upset at little things, I know that I've run into many families that have sons, daughters, brothers, sisters going through it, and they're always asking for money. Oh, well, I need $20 for gas money. I need $20 to get here. I need $20 for this, $10 for this, and they're consistently begging for it. That's a pretty sure sign that something's going on.
And we're talking about the Sober Living Homes, and you run two of them in Seaford, and you say the demand and need is huge here.
Yeah, it really is. So our heart behind opening Square One, our two homes that we currently have, is seeing people that get out of treatment and then having to go back to their old circumstances, their old environment, and it's just not conducive to sobriety because there's so many triggers that could be their old friends, old habits, just old environment. So what we do with these homes, we have drug testing, we do alcohol testing, we do synthetic marijuana testing, K2, all that stuff, spices, and we have a very loving environment. They come in, it's open arms, it's a big family, and we're there to walk with them, help them find employment. We've got employers working with us to help get these guys back on their feet.
Great. David, thanks for joining us
Absolutely.
tonight. And if they want more information about that, be sure to give him a call. Now, phone lines are open right now. You can speak with David or any of our other representatives on rehabilitation and recovery programs. Call that number, 443-880-9195.
This year, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan committed over $22 million to fighting the opioid drug epidemic. Delaware Governor John Carney designated $1 million of the state's budget to funding substance abuse treatment programs. And in the past legislative session, Virginia added more than $15 million to combat the issue. Our final story focuses on a Delmarva man and his life-saving recovery center, who shows us we can find hope in a dark space. We found true inspiration in his words. To him, it's poetry. Here's WBOC's Todd Carley.
I write because in the darkness I will shine my light. I will not go gently into the night. I will fight my adversary with all my might. I trust in God because he's changing me from the inside out. In him, I have no doubt. We can have all our fancy cars, smoke the most expensive cigars, but without God on our side, we're most certainly mentally scarred. All blessings flow from heaven. He will give us perfect peace. No more bondage of my mind, you see, I've been released. You see, I ask not what God can do for you because I know what he's already done for me. Not because I deserve it, but because he truly does love you and me. Maybe 2 years ago, I was listening to a Carrie Job song, and at the end of it, there's a guy, and he says, if there's words to describe God, then I don't have them. And I thought about that. I was like, wow, if there were words to describe God, then I don't have them. And I just started thinking about that, and then just out of nowhere, it just started coming. And so I just continued to write.
For Bruce Dawson of Seaford, his spoken word has provided hope and inspiration for many who have heard it. But it wasn't too long ago when Bruce, who was hooked on drugs like cocaine and heroin, needed some hope of his own.
And at my lowest of lows, it was nothing not to bathe for months. It was nothing to think about, okay, I'm at a family function, there are pocketbooks sitting here, I need to get in those pocketbooks, and then thinking, you shouldn't do that, but not being able to stop myself, like, I gotta do it.
Bruce sought help at a local church, and the pastor paid his tuition for him to come to Seaford and enroll in Teen Challenge. About 3 years later, Bruce now works at the facility. Some days are spent in the Teen Challenge thrift store in a supervisor role.
One of the things I do is I'll oversee them. And in the process of overseeing them, of course, I work alongside of them. And so that's like my major thing here. And whatever else they might need help in furniture, I'll go help there. The floors might need to be swept, I'll sweep the floors. Working hard or hardly working? Me too.
Bruce credits Teen Challenge and its faith-based program for turning his life around.
Teen Challenge has given me the opportunity to draw closer to God and to allow him to change me. And it's because of that change that I'm able to have a life now. Who will heal these people like me? You see, they hurt deep within their spirit, and Jesus is the truth, and it's our appointed time to hear it. You see, lost generation, God is very real. He is the reason that we touch, taste, and feel. We need only to give our lives to him, and our wounded spirits he will heal.
When a man struggling with addiction enrolls in Delmarva Teen Challenge, they become a student and are asked to live at the facility for a year. The curriculum there includes 800 hours of faith-based classes. Bob Carey is the executive director and a former alcoholic.
We call it like a God hole, where there's a hole in their heart and they're trying to fill it with something, whether it's drugs, alcohol, pornography. We believe that when Jesus fills that hole, everything else is displaced.
I wanted to be a minister. I wanted to be a preacher. That's what I wanted to be. And so Teen Challenge has given me the opportunity to basically meet that, an opportunity to follow that calling. And so that's why I wanted to stay. I wanted to give back. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And out of the darkness the Word spoke, let there be light. I write because in the darkness I will shine my light. I will not go gently into the night. I will fight my adversary with all my might. I trust in God because he's changing me from the inside out. In him I have no doubt.
The people at Teen Challenge have heard Bruce's powerful spoken word. Teen Challenge is just one of many organizations on Delmarva that can give you or your loved one hope in a dark space. And Jackie, you still have representatives from Teen Challenge and other organizations answering calls in the Newsplex.
Well, the people you see behind me here in this call center have a tremendous amount of experience, and they're also totally committed to helping you or a loved one battle the demons of addiction. If you're looking to get your recovery journey started, call 443-880-9195. Now, if you haven't had a chance to get through tonight, our call center volunteers will continue to man the phone lines. But also, you can get all of the information you need and the phone numbers of these local experts on our website, WBOC.com. Steve?
As we've seen throughout tonight's broadcast, people are willing to help you battle addiction. For more on how you or someone you know can get help overcoming drug addiction, or simply to know more about the opioid crisis here on Delmarva, go to our website, WBOC.com, and click on the tab Hooked, Delmarva's Drug Crisis for information. Now, if you would have told me 5 years ago that one of the biggest problems in 2017 would be heroin and opioid addiction, I would have said no way. But as you've seen from the past hour, this problem touches many, many lives. If you were unaware of how bad and deadly this problem is, we hope we've opened your eyes. If you or someone you know is battling addiction, we hope you'll take advantage of the resources we provided to get help. It is literally life or death, and it's a tremendous struggle. The good news, there are plenty of success stories in this fight against drug addiction. We must celebrate those victories, find solutions, and help people who are hooked. From all of us at WBOC, thanks for watching. Good night.